Fate Extella Link is the sequel to Fate Extella, which was Marvelous's take on the hack and slash genre. This game, thankfully, does improve on that in pretty much every single way, especially graphics and gameplay, as well as this game having 10 new playable characters, most of which are fan favourites from the Fate universe. So I would describe this game as a mass extermination simulator. There's just so many enemies per battle. It's kind of mindless in a way, but it is also extremely fun. There's more of a focus on bosses and bigger enemies in this game as opposed to something like, Dynasty Warriors, where peons are a little bit of a threat. In this game, they're just, fodder for you to mow down. So this game has kind of scripted battles with you having set objectives per stage for you to go and, complete. There's quite a bit of more variety than the first game. For example, you'll have two allies being attacked in different sectors and you need to go and rescue them, otherwise, it's game over. Or there'll be glitched sectors, because this is all in this digital universe and all this stuff. It's all described in the first game, so you might need to play that if you want the full story, but I would say this does stand alone. However, yes, there are glitched sectors which it hides most of the map with some static, and you have to sort of wander in there and disable all these jammers and stuff, which is quite fun in a way, just going through this thick fog. So they have tried to change it up quite a bit from the first game and having multiple different objectives instead of just this mindless Dynasty Warriors Empires-esque capturing sectors, and then when you've captured them all, the final boss appears. They're closer to normal battles and stuff in Sengoku Basara and Warriors games in a way in this. However, they're not complete maps. They're split into all these sectors with little pathways in between which you can fast travel down, so the action isn't that far away compared to those games. Because it's so fast from getting from one area to another, you get into the action relatively quickly, and I find that very enjoyable. That being said, there are quite a lot of interruptions per stage, enemies appearing, all the enemy servants or playable characters as we'll call them. Whenever they appear, there's always a scene where they, do some, little pose, like Drake always brushes her hair and shoots her guns and all that. That appears every single time, and it gets a bit annoying. And every time there's a character gimmick in a stage, Francis Drake bombarding an area, or Tamamo makes some of her allies invincible, there'll be a scene where they do all this magic and stuff. So it appears quite often. As well as weapon deadlocks in this game, when you're fighting an enemy servant or playable character, you do cause a weapon deadlock, and they happen quite a lot, and it gets a little bit too frustrating. Interrupts the gameplay a little bit too much. They could have, actually patched that stuff out, or they could have had an option in the options menu to, disable character intros some of the time, which would have been, quite nice. Wouldn't have broken up the gameplay so much. So the combat system in the game is your classic weak attack, strongest attack system, with additional 4 attacks which are activated by one of the shoulder buttons. Each character has 7 of these attacks. They're quite a lot stronger than your normal strong attack. They can be changed into any combination and assigned to any button, which is quite nice. These attacks can be used at any time, so if you're in the middle of a chain, you can just, hold R1 or whatever your shoulder button is, and then activate one of these attacks. They're quite strong. They're in several different categories, so most of them are just, normal attacks. There are others like parries and counters, which are signified by this light yellow, white colour, and then there's buff and status effects, like Nero imbues her weapon with fire and stuff like that, or just generally making your attacks a lot stronger, which are signified by either green or purple. So when you level up, these attacks get stronger and the cooldown is reduced. Yes, these attacks are on a cooldown system, so kind of like the only unique attacks people had in Dynasty Warriors 9, except, this game isn't shit like that. Yes, I'm taking the opportunity to shit on Dynasty Warriors 9 again. This game has the combat system which I think most people would have been happy with in a Warriors game, and thankfully it is actually really good. I genuinely love playing this game. The cooldown on some of the attacks could be a bit more for some of the attacks. I personally, when I play this game, I feel a little too much reliance on using these new attacks, maybe because it's a new system and the attacks are just, really cool. I find quite a lot of the time I'm just, spamming these attacks. So yeah, I think they could have increased the cooldown a little bit, but So still talking about the gameplay, the old characters from, the previous game, quite a lot of their stronger attacks actually become these, shoulder button attacks. It's fine. Does actually make the characters a bit more enjoyable to play. I personally enjoyed playing more as the older characters than I did the new ones. I think it's just due to this new system. So all the characters get a new, moveset, with some of the older characters getting their old moves as these stronger attacks. In addition to these mechanics, there is an additional feature with support characters, which you get to pick 2 per stage, and depending on your bond level, they can join in on an attack or defend you from an enemy attack at a set chance. Obviously, the higher your bond with the character, the more likely they are to help you or, protect you, which is quite good. The bond system remaining unchanged from the previous game, where you get to pick 5 or so set objectives which are given to you by a character, and if you complete the objective you gain a bond level and all that stuff. And then when you go into your base camp later on, you can talk to them and they give you all this story about how they love you and stuff. So the other feature is drive skills, or moon drive, or whatever you want to call it. I am actually going by the Japanese names in this. So basically they're like Musou attacks. You press circle or A or whatever it is on your controller, and then you become a bit stronger, sort of the little gauge goes down, and then you press circle and your character does a finishing move, which during this time will actually replenish the Noble Phantasm mechanic, which is about 2.5 times on average to fill the whole gauge. Sometimes you can get it in 1, sometimes you can get it in 2, but that 2.5 is probably about the average. So the Noble Phantasm is, this whole massive attack, which your character plays a scene where they do something. My favourite is probably Nameless, where he does this whole speech about how he has no name and stuff, and he is his sword and all that. And then you get a scene, and then they just cause like a massive explosion and do all this stuff. In the previous game, you have to collect 3 chip things scattered around the stage, and then you could activate it. Thankfully in this, with it being linked to the moon drive system or the drive system, you can activate it more than once per stage, and it's really, really fun and really great. Thankfully you can skip the Noble Phantasm after seeing it for the first time, or I think you might just be able to skip it normally, because it takes quite a lot of time to actually get through the thing. It's unfortunately not an instant kill on everybody, because if you use it on a boss they can still survive, but whatever. So the story, I have actually got a few issues with this. The story is, your average, anime-esque fucking nonsense. So there's 27 stages. They have gone for a different route in this. You can pick any character you unlock, as opposed to the previous game, which was very much Tamamo's, Nero's and Alteria's stories. So they are the main focus of this story, as well as Charlemagne, but thankfully, obviously being able to pick any character does change it up a bit, instead of you being stuck with the same characters over and over again. But unlike the first game, which had the 3D models, this time they've actually gone for a sort of a visual novel style of storytelling, with just the character, anime render, or whatever you want to call it, just there, and then they'll change expression and just like, walls of text, which I don't think is as engaging as, having the 3D models talk around you and all that stuff. I'm fairly sure this is actually because of all the character bond scenes, which are all done in the same style. Whenever a character talks to you, it's all these visual novels-esque style of telling the story, which I think is kind of lazy, and it's not very engaging. At least it's a step up from, Wario's Orochi 4, which they just had the static pictures just stand there, no expressions at all. So, at least it's a step up from that. So that's a bit of a step back. Although I do genuinely enjoy the story, how it was, sort of done with, being able to change any character and all that. So one of the features I have mentioned before is the base camp, which is quite a nice idea. Basically, it's an area which you as the master. Yes, you actually have a character model this time, which you can control and walk around. You are followed by a servant, and you can talk to all the other servants in the area and ask how they are and stuff. That's obviously done in the visual novel style again, so that I wouldn't really say that it was utilised that well, because you could have had the 3D models just, doing all these different things instead of just, standing around. They could be like looking at the fountain in the middle, sitting down, talking to each other, all that stuff. So in the base camp there are 3 different facilities. One of them just takes you to the battle preparation screen. Another one is your room, which you can change your character or active servant or playable character, whichever you want to refer to them as. You can change all their equipment, such as install skills, mystic codes, change their costume. You get to view their moveset, change all their active skills, or the shoulder button attacks. It shows you all the information on the characters via about 200 different menus. Also, the active character you're playing as, you get to see their bond scenes. So some of the menus are a little bit redundant, which we'll get onto in a minute, as well as the last facility being the other servant rooms. So the characters you're not playing as are in other rooms, done in the visual novel style again, of just, the character render there, and you get to talk to them and all stuff like that. Which they could have actually had the system from the first game, which in side stories you'd have like Lubu or Medusa just standing in their rooms and all that. They could have done that. That would have been nice. Okay, so let's go on to the menus. There's just so many of them, which is a bit pointless. So the base camp feature, which I mentioned, you have to go there every time you select a stage, and then you go onto a battle preparation screen, which gives you the same options as your servant room, with you being able to change your character and all your equipment and all stuff like that, which seems a bit pointless. If they did it the other way around, which you go to your base camp and then select a stage, you could have just sort of eliminated the battle preparation thing straight away. Just made the information on the battle or stage you were going to do first appear on that screen. This is your main opponent and your map. Make that a little bit bigger, give a few more details. Bob's your uncle. Yeah, so they made a few things kind of redundant in that way. So the servant room doesn't really serve that much of a purpose, if you're honest, or the battle preparation screen, whichever way you look at it. Another thing they could have actually done is reduce some of the menus down to having them as base facilities, like having the character model viewing, so you can view all your character voice lines and attacks and stuff. Well, it's not all the attacks, it shows you like their idle animations and running and blocking and all stuff like that. Could have had that in like a gallery area, which would have been nice. You could have had all the characters at the same time, so you don't have to swap characters to see all of them individually. As well as all the equipment, you could have had all your equipment in one thing, so you could have changed it between characters, on the fly, instead of having to select character, go back, change all their skills, change all their equipment, all stuff like that. I think they could have utilised the base a lot more in that sense, as well as you could have actually just had all that stuff done at the servant rooms. You go there and you select their equipment and all that. So if you like menus, this game is probably for you as well. So yeah, they could have utilised that a bit more to reduce down the menus and actually had something to do at this HQ other than run around. So yeah, I think it was quite a late addition to the game, which is a bit of a shame. Yeah, the last thing we'll go over is the install skills, which are basically unchanged from the previous game, which are passive abilities which boost your character in certain ways, like more health, more defense, elemental abilities. They're color coded, thankfully, red, blue or yellow, and if you put the same colors next to each other, you get an added bonus to all the installed skills, which is quite nice. So basically unchanged from the previous game. Later on, when you complete the story, well, at least that's when it unlocked for me, you get to combine them, so you can have more health and defense in the same skill, providing you have enough of these things and enough code money, whatever you want to call it, to combine them. So that's quite nice. And the other thing returning from the previous game is mystic code abilities, which give in-game battle effects like health recovery, drive recovery, double attack. So basically stuff you can get in stages straight away, which you can get instantly via this system, as well as some of the others being you can, you know, teleport back to where your master is. Yeah, I should mention one of the things they actually went for in this game is your master is now actually a unit in each stage. They basically control like a little computer thing, which is quite strange in a way why they did that, but you know, I'm not going to go against it. So one other change, and probably the last thing I'll mention, is the removal of character stories. This time they've actually changed it to just extra stages. All the stages do have a bit of a backstory to them, why you're fighting, you know, Drake or Lancelot or whatever. They ditched them in favour of this. There's quite a lot of stages. They range from level 1 to about 100. You can't change the difficulty on these, by the way. They're all set difficulties. Some of them are actually quite difficult. So there we go, my friends. I tried to keep it relatively short and simple for this one. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. One thing I should mention is there's multiplayer in this game, which is incredibly fun, which you know, capture areas and points and stuff, but unfortunately I wasn't able to capture any footage because I'm rather busy lately. But trust me, the multiplayer is really fun and it's not dead, unlike, you know, Warriors Archery 4, which lasted about a day and wasn't advertised very well. At least with this game it's still sort of active, just not when I wanted to record it. But I'm not sure if it's going to be more active on PC or Switch or whatever. Yeah, so thank you very much for watching. If you did, let me know what you thought about this game. Was there anything you wanted me to cover more in depth another time in another video? Or if you want me to cover any character gameplays or anything like that, let me know. Yes, thank you very much for watching. If you did, let me know what you think about this game, this video, the rest of your life, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, boy!